Parent Entrepreneur Power, conversation number 225.
Parent Entrepreneur Power.
Wait, what? It's Mama Power!
This is the podcast for parents juggling the tough choices required for success in business while putting family first. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Johnson, and I share the ups and downs and dirty truths of profits and potty training while chatting with successful parent entrepreneurs from all walks of life. Are you powered up? Hey there, Power Parents. Yes, Mary Catherine Johnson here. Welcome to Parent Entrepreneur Power. And I get to chat today with someone who's been a listener of the podcast. And if you want to find out how to be a guest on this podcast and any other, then you just need to look this gal up. Okay, right now I'm just going to say that. You need to look her up and chat with her for 5 minutes, and she will give you the secret. All right, so here we go. You get to listen to my conversation with Suzanne Brown, and she is the founder and CEO of 2 businesses and the mother of 2 little boys. So hey there, Suzanne. How you doing?
I'm so glad to be here. I'm doing great.
Yay! All right, so you know where we start this, and I'm just going to leave everybody hanging and let them figure out why they need to contact you to find out how to get on a podcast. So we're just going to jump into this conversation because I want to find out more about your story. So exactly that, your story, your once upon a time story. How did you become an entrepreneur and a mom at the same time?
So my background is in the corporate world. And for more than 12 years, I worked at huge companies. So really big marketing agencies. I worked on huge pieces of business. And in 2004, I finished up with grad school and I had a side hustle. And so I had that side hustle from 2004 to 2012. And in 2011, our older son was born. And he was a preemie. He was born 10 weeks premature. And so I had no idea what was going to happen after we left the neonatal ICU. No idea. And so I talked to my boss and I said, I want to work part-time. And so she's like, okay. We had our conversation and I started working part-time and I still had the side hustle. But for that first year, I got contacted constantly about how did you convince your boss to let you do this? And so I'm trying to be a mom. I have this normal job but I was working 20 hours a week. I have a side hustle. And so in 2012, I focused just on my business. And it was, it's a lot easier when you're just focusing on one thing instead of trying to be a mom to a young child. And we had the best situation with having a preemie. I mean, he's just been a mover and a shaker since he was born, basically. And we didn't have any of the challenges that a lot of preemie parents do of having a bunch of appointments that you have to go to and having to deal with specialists and therapy appointments and all of those things. We just didn't have those, but you don't know that. And I had no idea what we were walking into, even though it was the best situation. So I just kind of made it all work together. And as I had one business, I was a strategic marketing consultant, and I have been this whole time. Marketing is my thing. But then as I started getting more and more of these questions about how do you do this? And now once I became an entrepreneur, it was, how do you manage your day? How do you get it all done? How do you continue to build your business part-time while having a young child? Oh, and by the way, how did you convince your manager again to let you work part-time? And so I ended up starting a new business to fill the gap of how do you transition to a part-time role as a professional, because there's no information in the marketplace.
Right.
So business 2 was started, and then right in the middle of all of that, we had our second child.
Baby 2.
Yeah. So life has always kind of been a juggle since I've been a mom, but it keeps things interesting.
And moms just, that's what we are. We're professional jugglers.
It's true.
right?
But you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. Like
No.
it keeps things interesting. And I
Yeah.
like having two different things that I work on, which I know you can relate to. So
I think I can. Yeah. So take me through that. So you actually then were an entrepreneur first. You had a side hustle. And when you say side hustle, was that still marketing stuff?
it was. I
Okay.
was a marketing consultant. And I will be very honest, the reason why I had this side hustle was I finished with an MBA in 2004. And I immediately had people reach out to me and say, "Hey, can you work on these projects?" And so I thought, okay, sure. But I had a job.
Right.
But the reason why I was willing to do the side hustle was my roles were they were great. They were resume builders, but I wasn't making enough money. And so I said, here's the deal. I'm okay with having the work-life balance and you not paying me enough because I kind of maxed out on the
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 position.
salary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I maxed out on what was allowed for the salary. And I was a senior level person, but I knew what I was worth. And so I said, okay, you give me the work life balance, but you're going to have to give me flexibility because if I need to go to 3 hour lunch to deal with a client, you need to be okay with that.
Right.
Um, and if I need to travel for a few days to go help, to work with a client on site, I need you to be okay with that. And I will work for you at the same time, but you need to give me that flexibility to travel somewhere else and be able to do that. And I didn't abuse that. When I did it, it was in very small pockets. But that was really what it was because of. I said, I'm just not making enough money based on what I know my value is.
Right.
So my side hustle made up for it.
Wow, that's awesome. And then finally, you got to the point where you just quit the job altogether and just did your side hustle full time, it sounds like.
Yeah, I needed more control over my schedule. And, when you work, even if you're working 20 hours, which is obviously a lot less than what most people work for in the corporate world, you're still having to answer to somebody else.
Hmm.
You're still, it's like, well, we agreed Monday, Wednesday, Friday here, or whatever. I don't even remember what the schedule was anymore, but it's like, this is what it's going to need to look like. You need to be here at this point. I kind of I had some say in my schedule, but I certainly didn't have control of my schedule.
Right.
And it was as flexible as I could get in a corporate setting, but I just needed more control over it. And there were other things that I wanted to be able to do with our older son at the time. And I needed more flexibility. So and of course there's that moment when my husband was like, excuse me. But it being an entrepreneur has been an amazing thing for this moment as a mother. It's
Wow. So how old are they now?
so we have a 7-year-old and a 4.5-year-old.
Okay. So you're coming into elementary school and all the activities and things that entails, and coming home after school or after daycare, whichever it is, and being able to switch gears really to be a mom at that time, because they still, I mean, 7, you're coming in to probably second or third grade.
Yeah, we are days away. We actually tomorrow is the last day of first grade.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, and that's just all the beginning. It just goes all the way through to probably 5th or 6th grade. So, balancing all of that with 2 businesses. So that was one business with the marketing and your own consultancy in that respect. But then now you've added the other business, and I'm assuming you're helping other moms do what you did.
I am. So I am a writer, a consultant, and a speaker on work-life balance. And there's no question a lot of women come to me and want to talk about this transition to a professional part-time role. But I also get asked a lot about just full-on work-life balance. And so part of it is helping in kind of one-off situations. So I don't do coaching in kind of the longer perspective of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I do more like strategy sessions.
Mm-hmm.
But I also work with companies to help them create more work-life balance for their employees.
Got it.
Because a lot of times they want that, they need that in order, honestly, to be competitive.
Yeah.
but they, sometimes they just have no idea how to make it happen. They're like, I know we need it, but what do I do now?
Right. And I know, of course, all the power parents know how I feel about the word balance, and I know you know how I feel about the word balance. But we're looking at this this is a different capacity. Okay, so what you're talking about in work-life balance is exactly that: work and life, and balancing the two so that neither are excluded or left out or sacrificed for the other, so that there's a balance between the time we spend at each of those things. What I'm thinking about, and the reason I don't like that word balance, is because we look at because I'm an at-home entrepreneur, and so there isn't really a balance between my time. I'm usually working, from 7, sometimes that early. I'm at my computer, and sometimes, like a couple of nights ago, I hate to say this because it's awful, but I was there till 2 in the morning. But there, in between there, I didn't constantly, well, in that sense, I kind of did. I only took about an hour and a half off that day just to make and eat dinner. And the rest of the time I was at my computer. That's a very, very rare occasion. I haven't done that in a couple of years. But normally it's like I'll start at 7, have a meeting, and I'll go put in a load of laundry because the kid needs something, or he gets up and he's not feeling good, so I make him breakfast. So I'm stopping my work and focusing on that other thing at home. And then I come back to work and he knows, nope, I've got to call and I've got to do this. So to me, that's why, just to clarify, I get it. I get what you're talking about in that balance. I'm talking about more my day. There's no such thing. I'm just, whatever I'm focusing on right now is what I'm focusing on. It's not balanced with anything else. It's just what I've got to do. But when you have little kids, that's a totally different thing too.
It is. And, for me, I still work part-time. I work like 25 to 30 hours a week. And my day pretty much shuts down from a business perspective at around 2:15 on a daily basis. So I work. I've got to get a lot of done between dropping off our boys and then picking them up. And then it's about being a mom. And I try very hard to stay focused. And then once they go to bed, and my husband and I switch off who puts them to bed. So whoever puts them to bed doesn't have to do dishes. And then once you're done either dealing with dishes or putting them to bed, then there are times when I will hop back onto the computer, or that might be, my husband and I try to connect every day for, even if it's just like 10 minutes.
Right.
But it is, there is a flexibility in my day, right? Being like you, I'm also an at-home entrepreneur. And so there will be times when it's the middle of the day and I realize like, oh, I've got to unload the dishwasher. And so those are the days when I use like the Pomodoro technique. So I'll work for 25 minutes and then in 2 5-minute sections I'm able to unload the dishwasher.
Right.
Right. But I don't have to stop everything in order to do that. That's like my mini break.
Right. Right, exactly. That's exactly what I do. And it's pretty much scheduled, unless like right now my youngest is already in his summer break. He's already done with school. So, and the oldest I don't even have to worry about because he's in college doing his own thing. But as he's home, as my youngest is home and, different things are happening, we do the same thing. He says, hey mom, sometimes he even says, hey mom, can you come get on your laptop and work in my room so that I can show you a couple of things? I'm like, yeah. So I go in and he's working on something that he wants to show me while I'm working. And then I take a break from that task I'm doing to see what he's working on. I love having that. That is so valuable to me, to be able to have that kind of flexibility and be able to take my laptop when I would have to drive him to school and be out on campus under the beautiful oak trees on a gorgeous, spring day or fall day and working right there. At campus instead of in some office or at a Starbucks or whatever. That flexibility is worth more to me than anything else.
I can totally agree. And, I bet the other thing is if you wanted to volunteer or whatever you wanted to do, you would be able to work a little bit, go into school and volunteer, and then go right back to working on that campus or run back home. That was kind of exactly what I wanted. And you can't do that when you work for a large company. I should say for most large companies.
Right.
That's really kind of an entrepreneurial thing. You get that from owning your time.
That's right. So let's dive into that then, because I guarantee you there are quite a few people listening. I know of a couple that are specifically employees still, and they're working on their side hustle. And for them to be able to have the leverage to be able to go to their employer and negotiate some of this stuff would be really amazing. But it's not always possible because your employer is going to want to pay you for a certain amount of hours, or a certain type of work or amount of work. So negotiating that means decreasing your pay most times, but that's not the case for you. You were able to negotiate that without the flexibility, without decreasing pay.
So I didn't, because I cut back as much as I did, that was not necessarily my story, but I interviewed many women who did just that. So literally women who work 20, 25 hours who still makes figures.
Mm.
Yeah, how about that?
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, quite honestly, I have coached women on how do you negotiate based on your value versus negotiating based on your time.
Got it.
Like I very much think that the conversation of money is the final step
Right.
in your conversation, in the proposal that you make, because what you really want to be able to do is show, here is how I excel. Here's how I am integral to your team. And this is what I bring to the table that nobody else brings to the table. Look at all of the things that I have done for this team, department, company, whatever
Mm-hmm.
kind of role you have.
Mm-hmm.
And as you sit there and you show all of these things, and they're, nodding their heads and saying, yeah, you're amazing. And then if you say, okay, well, I want to cut my time by 25%. Oh yeah, can you go ahead and cut my salary 25%? Like, no. I mean, you want to be able to say, here's all the stuff that I can do. I can be amazingly productive, and I've achieved all of these things. Look at my areas of expertise. I need to be able to have more flexibility. I want to work from home. I want to cut my time, whatever it is that you really need to negotiate. And after they say, okay, we get it, we don't want you to leave, what do you need? Then you have the conversation about money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think so many times we come to the table and we say, okay, I'm going to cut my time 25%. I understand that I will have a 25% cut in my salary.
Right.
It's like, wait, no,
we don't have to.
Don't do that.
Right.
Absolutely don't do that.
Wow.
And that was what these women achieved who I talked to because one of the questions that I asked was about salary. And to hear them talk about it, they understood their value. That was the thing that they did across the board when they negotiated this way. They truly understood their value, what they brought to the team that nobody else did.
Perfect.
And they owned that.
Perfect. All right. So let's just ask, what's the biggest difficulty in this conversation? What's one of the biggest roadblocks for women or men to be able to have this kind of conversation with their employer?
I think the biggest roadblock was the individual, like literally the person who needed to go to their manager, because and I spoke mainly to women, but this can apply to men. I think there are a few shifts that men have to take as they're having these conversations, but it was in a lot of these situations, things kind of came to a head. I need to take care of my ailing parent. I'm having a health crisis, whatever the thing is, instead of realizing kind of up front. And so they had to get to a point where they finally said, okay, I've got to go do this. Like, I need to have this conversation. But ultimately, when they had supportive employers, they really just needed to show essentially a win-win. This is what I get out of it. This is what you get out of it, because that's incredibly important. And for those women who didn't get that support, they went and started their own thing.
Right.
So, about 38% of the women who I spoke with had to start their own business. They could not get the support from their employer. They were completely challenged in being able to get more balance in their lives, whether that was flexibility or work from home or whatever it was. And so they said, I know what I'm worth. I know what I can do. I'm starting my own thing. I'm done here.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. So that's it. If that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. It's really a decision. It's not, this isn't the only option is the job. There is a choice you do have, as long as you are mindful of your own power, your own ability. If you're not, that's kind of what I was thinking of. And when you said the individual, I'm thinking of your mindset. It's your mindset. And you need to overcome your own limitations, that this is my only option. Because this is the way it's been dictated, then this is the only option. And I did that with the business I was working for when I was a headhunter back in 2000, actually 2001, right before I broke my legs. I had lost my job. It was the .com explosion, bomb, whatever you want to call it, and everything was shutting down, and I was a technical recruiter. So there were no jobs, there were all kinds of candidates, but no jobs to get for them. And so I had to make a shift, but at the same time I was pregnant. And so I found an amazing female woman-owned business that said, yep, we can take you on, and you can set your own hours, and you can set the type of work you do. And yes, you'll be able to take time off when you have the baby and come back, and we'll give you whatever flexibility you want. You can only work 25 hours a week. And it was like my absolute dream job. Amazing. And that was back in 2001. So if it was possible for me to negotiate in 2001, you better believe it's possible now.
It is. And, I actually, we're talking about individuals, but I think that one of the things that we don't do enough as parents in the workforce is understand that if we're going through something, then there's probably somebody down the hallway who's going through the exact same thing.
Right.
And so we don't generally come together as, whether it's working moms or working parents, whoever, and go to senior leadership as a group to negotiate things either. So many of the conversations are one-on-one with a manager.
Right.
Instead of, there's a big difference between one-on-one between you and your manager and 20 working parents going to senior leadership and saying, we need things to be different. This
Right.
isn't working for us anymore.
That's right.
Totally different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, obviously we're talking about a small form of unionizing in that respect without the structure and the bureaucracy, but and it's collective bargaining, right? It's just being a collective unit saying, guess what? We're all parents. You'll get much better results out of us if you allow for this kind of flexibility. So yeah, I get it. That's fantastic. So basically you coach people to be able to walk them through that process to approach their company with these options. And if the company is rigid and will not bend or cannot bend or whatever the reasons are, doesn't matter. If it's not going to happen, then coach them on what their next option is to be able to create this for themselves.
Yeah, because some of them will say, okay, well, that means I need to go to another company. Or some will say, I'm ready to start my own business. Or some will say, I need to stay here for X amount of time, and then I'm going on to my next option. It varies from person to person, because you kind of have to know, like, what is it that I really want, and what is it that I'm willing to settle for? And, you've got those areas of negotiation, right? It's like, I must have this. This is
right.
This is a required part of whatever it is that we create as my next situation. But I think a lot of times we go into negotiation not really understanding what is my must have. What are the things that I'm willing to kind of give away, and what are the what are the must haves that I have to have, or else it's just not even worth it.
Right. Yeah. Got it. And so how what kind of a success rate? I mean, obviously they're successful in creating these situations, whether it's at their company or on their own, opening their own business. But what would you say, what's the biggest shift? What's the biggest change that happens? Is it a higher percentage of the companies that change, or is it a higher percentage of the individuals or the employees who change and decide to go and start their own thing?
It has definitely been that the companies have been willing to negotiate.
Yay!
Because, I think one of the women who I interviewed said it in very simple terms. She said something to the effect of, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Right.
Almost no manager is going to come to you and say, hey, I bet you want to spend more time with your child at home. I bet they're like right about at that age where you really kind of want to engage with them a little bit more. Or, hey, your kid must be like in the teenage years. Are they going through a hard time? Because let me give you more flexibility. No manager is going to come to their employee and do that. Like, I can't, I've never heard of that being the case. There might be a manager out there who's amazing.
Right.
But it's really taking advantage of that. And honestly, some of the time there are policies that are in place for companies, both large and small,
right,
where they are willing to have flexibility of like, you can work from home, X number of days, or you can drop down to this many hours and we'll still give you all of your benefits, or whatever the case is.
Right.
But they are not going to necessarily publicize that. You actually have to
everybody
go find,
else. Right.
Yeah, you're going to have to go find that information in the policy manuals and whatever,
right,
and talk to HR.
Right.
And sometimes it's really just taking advantage of what's already there,
right,
instead of trying to come up with something brand new.
Yeah. And trying to morph what's already there or adapt what's already there to fit what you need it to fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Wow. That's fantastic. So, so are you still doing, okay, bring me back to that. So you're still doing the market strategy and also the consult or coaching for, and I'm sure you call it something specific, but flexibility, what do you call it?
I do. So I still am a marketing strategist. I still have clients. I work more with seasoned entrepreneurs on challenging marketing problems, right? So it's how do you overcome a strategic marketing issue of, like I'm trying to move into a new space. I already have a widget. Either what do I need to adjust in order to go into that new market, or is there another market that might be a better option? So I tend to do projects that have some kind of research component, but they're strategic business problems with a marketing twist.
Got it.
Essentially. And I still do that on a regular basis. And then I am actually in the process of finalizing my second book. So not only do I have more of kind of strategy sessions and consulting for companies, but I'm finishing up the second book. So it's, there are a lot of balls in the air right now.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, life is interesting. And when one thing kind of tends to be a bigger project, the other things get a little bit smaller, and then they shift around, tomorrow or next week or next month. And so it just kind of depends.
Wow. Okay. Got it. And then, so I'm sorry, did I hear a name in there
So I am getting feedback on the second name. But it will be, so the first book is called Mompowerment, and the second book will be a Mompowerment guide of some sort, because I'm going to do a 4-part series. So there will be, there's the first one about part-time. The second one is for work-life balance in general for working moms. The third one is going to be on how do you become the company that women want to work for. So it's going to be geared towards companies. And then the final one will be for dads.
Got it.
And so yes, it will be. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, are you going to be an author and are you going to write more than one book? I'm pretty sure I would have laughed. Yeah, there's no way. But it is, I feel like I understand a lot more how do you write a book. And I'm actually having my first meeting next week with a like an executive coach who actually coaches men on having more work-life balance. And so he and I are going to look at doing some collaboration so that we can play off of each other's areas of knowledge and expertise and all that fun stuff. And plus, he's a super cool guy, so I would love to do some stuff with him.
Wow, that's fantastic. Wow, that's great. So, okay, so mom empowerment, definitely. Obviously, a combination of mom and empower, or just mom's power. Which one is it? Is it empower, or are you playing off of just the word power?
It's all about empowering moms.
Yeah, empowerment. Perfect. And then, and you're still working part-time. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So, the whole reason why I do all of these things is so that I can spend time with my boys. That's
Right.
really what it comes down to. So I have to be incredibly productive on an hourly basis, and things change a lot in the summertime. Summer looks a lot different than it does during the school year, which is okay. You make it work.
Yep.
But I feel very strongly about being the face that my boys see every day at pickup. That is incredibly important to me. And honestly, it's incredibly important to them. And in for our soon to be second grader, I volunteer in the library. So I get to see him every other week in his, with his class in the school library. And I volunteer in the classroom and like in the front office. And it's there, I can like write it into my calendar so I know exactly when it's going to happen. And I'm room mom for our younger son's teachers because they're amazing women for the most part. And I want to make them feel special. I mean, they take care of my boys for, 5 hours a day or whatever the time is. And, but I also can't be that person who takes care of my boys. Like I couldn't homeschool my children. I have all the respect in the world for those people who can, but I describe it as I love my boys, but I also love them from a distance.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay with that. Because I need to work, not necessarily from a financial perspective, but I am a much better parent because I have my own goals and my own achievements, and I'm able to use that side of my brain to break down marketing challenges and to help my clients and to feel success like for myself,
Right.
So I have to make my day work, but I have kind of figured out the productivity things that help me do a lot better in my day and get a lot more done and still be strategic and not just simply checking off a bunch of boxes.
Right. Definitely. That's fantastic. So, wow. All right. So we've covered a bunch of different topics. We've talked about, the different consulting that you do and the structure of your day. We didn't talk about specifically the structure of your day, but at least the balancing structure of your day. How is there any particular task or duty or tool that you use to try and create that work-life balance?
So the first thing that I do on a daily basis is I should say Monday through Friday, is I have a power hour. So in that first hour of the day, I've dropped off my boys, I come home, and I do nothing other than my most challenging task for the day. So don't check email, don't look at my phone, don't get on social media. And I literally solely work on the most challenging thing that I need to accomplish for that day. Because if I don't do anything else that day, if the school calls and says, oh, you need to pick up your child, he's got a fever of 102, then it doesn't matter because I have achieved the one main goal that I had for the day by solely focusing on it for an hour. And that has made a huge difference in just my ability to get work done.
Right.
Because if you start looking at your phone or if you start looking at email, you can kind of go down a rabbit hole.
Oh, not kind of. Nope, I get down that rabbit hole all the time.
But it made a really big difference. And I actually, the way that I look at time is a little bit different than most people because my approach is essentially a formula. So it's time management plus productivity plus staying on task equals being efficient. Because it's not about productivity or time management. It really is about being efficient with the time that you have.
Right.
Right?
Definitely.
And so you kind of have to figure out which levers work in each of those areas. So, we talked earlier about the Pomodoro technique, which
Right.
is where you work for 25 minutes, you take a break for 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So for some people, that's a great productivity hack. For other people, it completely doesn't work. So you have to figure out what is going to let you take advantage of your own productivity rhythm. And I will say one of the things that I have realized that most people don't do is most people don't actually use their peak productivity the right way. So I use a power hour first thing in the morning because I am most productive first thing in the morning. That is like the peak of my productivity. So I don't want to spend that checking off a bunch of boxes. That's, when I am full on, like full power, full brain power, I want to hit my most challenging problem so that I am I'm basically maximizing my energy,
Right.
like my brain power. I want to use the highest level of my brain power when I am most engaged on the most difficult task, right?
Right.
But if that is when I am normally at my best and I have a standing call that's not really productive, then I'm not actually using the highest level of productivity of my day.
Right.
Right. And most people kind of take what comes at them and they say, okay, that's how I'm going to fill up my calendar versus let me think about how I'm most productive. And so that's why you can use things like batching or time blocking and Pomodoro technique and, whatever it is that is helpful. And then from a time management perspective, it's understanding how do you manage your calendar? How do you think through your time? And there are lots of different ways that you can do that. And then staying on task. Some people are really good at that. I mean, there's no question. Some people can be uber focused. And then there are other people who need to use technology that won't allow them to get onto social media. Or it will say, okay, you can be on social media for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to basically kick you out of
Right.
whatever programs you've indicated that you can't log on to. I have to have access to the internet because of what I do for a living, whether it's in my work-life balance business or whether it's in doing research for a project for something for my strategic marketing business. But I also don't get on social media. Like I am not on social media all day long.
Right.
I check it and then I'm out. And then, and it's the same for all of the different kinds of social media. So whether it's Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is, if you're trying to work and you think, oh, my friend, has she had her baby yet? Oh, let me go onto Facebook. Like,
oh, it's
the next
awful
thing
when
you
I do
know, yeah, like an hour and a half has passed and you're like, oh, I didn't get those things done. Like, no. So that's why it's those three areas combined that actually help you to make everything happen in your business.
that. Perfect. Yep, definitely. Yeah, I luckily because in my business I use Toggle so that I time track based on what project I'm working on. And that doesn't necessarily bill the client, but it allows me to track how much time I'm taking in this particular project so that the next client I get that's a similar project, I can bill it accordingly and make sure that I'm profitable with the amount of time that I have to take to actually do the task that I've promised them I'm doing. So if I'm on Toggle, it gives me there's like this red button that basically is staring at me. You are tracking your time. So it's like, oh, I can't go on social media because I'm tracking my time for this client. So, right, it just takes care of that for me so that I can't do it. It's not until I actually turn off Toggle. Unfortunately, you can pause it as well. So if you really wanted to cheat and go on social media, you can pause your time and then come back to it. But that's not good. We don't do that. I want to get it done. When that red button is hanging at me, I want to get that thing done before I go do anything else. But unfortunately, my business is on social media. So, that's another story. But anyway, yes, I love it. Pomodoro, I love it. Productivity, I love it. All amazing things. And Power Hour especially, I love it. I love it. So,
Well, and that's how you do something very similar. So
right.
it is, but I think that a lot of people are like, yeah, 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 okay, sure, but it works.
It
It really
works.
does.
It really, really, really works. And when I don't do it, I know. I see the difference in my day. I see the difference in my productivity. Now, that day when I did stay up till 2 a.m. and the next morning I got up at 7, I guarantee you I did not do my yoga, because if I did and I laid down on that mat, I would have immediately fallen asleep. So, not happening. So, I didn't exercise that day. But the other stuff I did. My journaling, my meditation, all those things, I did that. And it's easier. I get it. It's easier when my kids are older, but it's also harder because my day is not as structured as it used to be. It's not where I have to get up at a certain time, get the kids out the door by a certain time, go pick them up at a certain time. I don't have that requirement anymore. I do sometimes with the 16-year-old, but I did not on the regular times like we used to. So I have to create that structure myself. It's harder for me to do that. It's easier when someone else imposes that kind of a structure and I have to work within it, because I'm one of those people that when I have a shorter amount of time, I get more done. It's the way I'm wired. I would much rather be under a deadline, because then I'll work faster and more and smarter and more have more productivity out of it. So I have to create that for myself, and it gets a little harder as the kids get older. But you guys aren't in that. You guys are young chickens, so you're fine.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a while before I'm not making lunches
I
and
know. And the
taking child to
volunteering,
school.
isn't that so fun? It is so cool to be able to do that in the middle of the day, right?
You know, I love being able to take a moment and go to the music performance for our 4.5-year-old. It's I mean, it's literally like 10 minutes, but it is that moment of just joy in the middle
Yeah.
of the day. And to see our 7-year-old's face when he walks into the library and I'm in there and he's like, Mommy!
Yes.
Like there are few things that are as just happy
Yeah.
as those moments. And I know I wouldn't be able to do this if I
Right.
worked for a company.
Right.
That's just reality.
Yes. Yeah. And it was fun too. It was a lot of fun when my kids were younger, because the boys, because I have two boys, so the boys were, when they were out doing things with their friends, we always knew, or they knew, because they would come and talk to me about it. They knew the boys whose moms didn't pick them up after school, or didn't come and volunteer. And most of the time, those boys ended up at our house after school. Instead of going home and being by themselves, they would choose to come over to our house and hang out. And of course, that was really cool for us, and totally fine. My kids had playmates and did all those kinds of things, so that we were able to have a safe place for some of their friends to come who didn't really have somebody waiting at home for them, so that they didn't have to be by themselves. And on a side note, this wasn't any of my boys' friends, but recently my youngest was online playing. He doesn't usually play this game. It's called Fortnite, but he was playing with some other kid.
Huge.
Yeah, he was playing with some other kid. And of course, so he's 16, and the kid that he's playing with that really wants him to play all the time is 13. And then all of a sudden, the 13-year-old brought on this other kid. He was 6 years old, playing Fortnite by himself at home after school. By himself. Parent and my son was asking, "What are you doing playing Fortnite?" And the kid's like, "I play it all the time." And it was so funny. He called me in. Riley called me in and is like, "Listen to this voice." And it was this little kid's voice. It was so. And he said, "So where's your mom?" And she's at work. "Where's your dad?" "He's at work." "You mean you're home alone?" "Yeah." What's about school?" He's like, "Well, I came home from school. This is what I do every day." I'm like, "Oh my goodness." And my son was freaking out, because it's a 6-year-old playing Fortnite at home by himself after school every day until the parents get home. That's what he did online. So, there's some shady characters my 16-year-old has been come in contact with online. Can you imagine what kind of shady characters this 6-year-old is going to come across? It was scary.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah, I know. It was sad. So anyway, but yeah, so being able to provide that kind of environment for kids who, if they wanted to come over to our house and stuff, but you have that opportunity, because the things that happen during the day, come out from them right after school.
Yes.
Not when you get home at 6. They're done and they're on to the next thing. But right when they come home from school, you get that. And that's the priceless stuff that you can, even if you only do that one day a week, if you at least do that, even one day a week, I get it if you can't pick them up every day. But if you do it one day a week, you get that, you have that opportunity that you won't have otherwise to help them brain dump from their day and analyze and learn the lessons out of it. Right? Have you seen that already?
I will actually tell you, we have had a really rough semester.
Oh.
Our 7-year-old has been he is he's a good student. He's a leader in his class. He has a lot of wiggles, and he maintains focus, and he's an incredibly energetic little boy.
Mm-hmm.
And he would literally get into the car at the end of the day and basically just kind of snarl. And he's been doing this for months, and it's very challenging because his little 4.5-year-old brother is, absolutely
up on
adores.
this. Yeah.
Well, he adores his big brother, and he thinks he like walks on water. And to basically just get a snarl as soon as the car door closed, I'm sure he was like, what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I spoke with my cousin, who is, she has 4 children, and she just has like the happiest disposition, and 2 of her children are boys. And she said, she gave me some great advice of basically like, just hand him food and ignore your child. Just literally ignore your child.
Yeah.
And so it was so interesting because once I did that, and I've only been doing this week, so I only have 4 days of data, but it's a totally different kid. Like,
Right.
this is like my child who's back to normal, and he's fine after a little bit of time, but I basically get to kind of smooth over that rough moment.
Mm-hmm.
And if he was going to daycare, or if he was staying in after school care, he would have to figure out how to manage that.
Right.
For several hours until I picked him up. And so having a safe place, literally as soon as the car door closes, I know it's such an important thing for him, but it is like, I'm finally getting information again.
Right.
Once I started doing that. But if he had just literally gone to after school care, which might be the thing that some parents absolutely have to have.
Yep.
I wouldn't know that.
Right.
I would probably get a really grumpy child every day at bedtime because he's just still trying to decompress.
Right.
And so it is, it was very eye-opening to see that, and to see that pattern kind of over and over. And it's like, I got to change something because this isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
But it definitely was painful to disengage. Because our younger son is like, da-da-da-da-da, and then da-da-da, and then and I'm like, slow down, buddy. And then the opposite of our older son, who's like, just leave me alone,
Yeah. And that's going to change in more. I mean, it's all a phase. It's all a phase, and one phase is going to go to another, but that phase could have stuck because he wasn't able to get past it. And that could have become a really, really moody teenager. Really,
oh yeah,
really, where you wouldn't know anything, and all of a sudden he'd come out with black hair hanging down over his eyes and black eyeliner.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And I've mentioned this to a few other moms who are in the same, they're working moms, and they're like, "That's brilliant. I'm going to start using that today." They're like, "I can't believe there's only like a week and a half or 2 weeks or whatever of the school year, but I'm going to start using that today." And it's like, it has actually made a huge difference already.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it fun? This is just, it's totally, every phase is different. And now I'm helping my oldest prepare to move away. So, just believe me, love them up because before you know it, they're off and they're adults and shaving and these deep voices, and you're just like, they call you, hopefully, or text you once in a while. That's it. Like, you're moving to where? Atlanta, Georgia? What the heck? Why? Yeah. So
Seems like you might be doing a lot more public speaking and consulting in the Atlanta area.
I think I'm going to. Yeah. And that's, it's make sure you have a nice little fold out bed for mom, That's all I ask. If I have to take a hotel, that's cool. If it's a studio, but hey, I'm fine sleeping on a cot. Really, I'm not that bad. Wow. All right, Suzanne. This has been too much fun talking. We've been talking for quite a while, and I'm so thankful for you to be able to come on to the show. And again, Power Parents, if you want to know how to get on a podcast, call this lady, chat with her. And not just that, but if you want to know about work-life balance beyond just that dirty word that I talk about, because obviously I agree with her 100% about the balance idea. When you're trying to work at a job or business, do that. And you've heard some terms that probably sound familiar: Pomodoro technique, power hour, those kinds of things. The more you hear it from a different voice other than mine, the more it gets pounded into our brain, because I need to hear it all the time too, because my life still changes and adapts. So, wow, Suzanne, thank you really, truly, for being on the show and sharing what you do, your expertise, your stories. I truly, truly appreciate it.
I've had so much fun, and I'm so excited to be a guest for a show that I so enjoy. So thank you so much for having me.
To get powered up for your day, just go to parentepower.com and listen to the over 200 episodes we have so far with amazing entrepreneurs just like you. It might just help you feel like a grown-up again.